Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Nick Banik from Mad Leads, who's going to be talking to us about strategies and tools for structuring paid campaigns for direct response. Me and Nick have worked together in a number of different capacities, both at his former agency. I've also used him for a bunch of personal projects. He's one of the best in the business. I highly recommend you talk to him if you've got any pressing questions on how to scale your direct response campaigns. But he's got some really cool stuff in store for us, exclusively for TTP. So without further ado, I'm going to shut off my camera, and let you take it away, dude.
All right, thanks. All right, everybody. So just a little bit of background here, and we'll share the presentation and everything later, but I own Mad Leads, so I do paid media consulting, and I basically just manage my own clients. But before that, I did work at 3 different agencies, and I've been doing paid media for about 8 years. And I just started actually a podcast as well, so I got the Learn Paid Media podcast. Just went live yesterday, actually, so I'll be updating that every week. So that'll be another place where kind of I expand on some of the things that I'm talking about today. And I work across all paid media. So this includes Google Ads, Bing Ads, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, everything, including even things like Criteo or programmatic display, pretty much anywhere you can buy media online. So if you have any questions as we go through, go ahead and ask those. And in case you hear any noise or whatnot, I live in an RV and I travel around the U.S. with my wife, kids, and my dog full time. So you might hear, some chaos in the background. I told everyone to try to keep it down, but we'll see. And yeah, and then also I work in direct response mostly. I've done some CPG and things like that as well, but for the most part, I'm working on e-commerce and lead generation in both B2B and B2C verticals. And I also have a tool that comes with this presentation, though you'll see this will be the link to it, but it'll be available for everyone to download and everything like that. And I'm getting them. Can you hear me okay, Nick? Because I'm getting a thing saying that my connection went down.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, I don't know what that was. All right, so anyway, you'll be able to get this this spreadsheet, and I'll go through this in depth as well because I want this to be a practical webinar that has kind of things that anyone can take away and actually just use for your direct management. So I'm only talking about paid search and retargeting today because I didn't want to make this too involved. So Facebook ads or anything like that, I'm not really focused on for this presentation. So if you do have questions on those, we can follow up later or whatnot. But this will just be mostly paid search and retargeting. And I'm mostly just going to focus on Google. There's a little bit about Bing. Just keep in mind that whatever you're doing on Google search, you can do on Bing ads as well. The retargeting, a little bit less so. So the first thing here, just make sure that you have publisher conversion tracking before you are launching anything. When you're running direct response campaigns, you want to have publisher tracking. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about attribution, but I just want everyone to be aware that having publisher tracking, which means Google Ads conversion tracking, Bing Ads conversion tracking, Facebook ads conversion tracking, all that from the publishers is really important to be able to use the optimization effectively. I've seen a lot of accounts where people think that they're just going to import Google Analytics goals into Google Ads and they're done. Problem with that is that there's a lag on Google Analytics making it into Google Ads. So if you're using automation, it can be problematic. But also, you get less attributed revenue and leads when you do that. And the reason is Google Analytics, if someone comes in on a Google ad and then comes back on organic, Google Analytics labels it as organic, and that paid click that started the path will never get credit unless you go through attribution tools in analytics and all that stuff, but it'll never make it into AdWords. So if you're using any sort of automation, you'll leave yourself a little high and dry. So always make sure you have publisher conversion tracking. And I'll say that even if you're not using it for your, end of month reporting or whatnot, it still helps you with your optimization. That's the last I'm going to say really about attribution, but if there's any questions, just send them in. All right, so some of the main things here, use brand search and non-brand search and display remarketing, but always be selective on how you're going to spread that budget out. So, brand search, I don't always recommend having brand search campaigns It's really based on what kind of industry you're in and what your competitors are doing. So if you have an industry where your competitors are bidding on your brand terms, you don't want to just leave it on the table and have them all take potential clicks from you, and it just makes you look bad. So for the most part, I will use brand search campaigns when competitors are there, or I'll do something that I call brand plus, which is like, let's say nobody's bidding on my law firm's name, but they're bidding on, let's say, law firm plus keyword, like law firm name plus keyword, because they're just bidding on the keyword. Then I might actually have a campaign where I bid on my brand name when it has those other things with it, but I'm not bidding on the exact match version. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we go. Um, and of course, you want to have non-brand search segmented out, and you want to have display remarketing. Pretty much every industry, display remarketing is helpful. If you're in a healthcare field or if you're in a legal space, there's some issues with Google, so we'll make sure to cover that. But if that's the case, which I've seen a lot, and they'll disapprove your list because you are, let's just say, you have people that you're trying to help that have been in, let's say it's car accidents, or you have people that you're trying to help that maybe have an issue with joint pain or something like that. Google will say that you can't put people into a list if they're in a negative situation. So you have to use a different channel for remarketing. So keep that in mind. When I say display remarketing or retargeting, I'll use both words. There's other tools out there, things like Perfect Audience or Criteo. Those ones are pretty good. I don't typically recommend ad roll too much, but if you needed to use it, you can use that. There's some other ones. You can go through programmatic display yourself as well. I've even had times where I actually used Google's DoubleClick Bid Manager, which has been rebranded to do this. So keep that stuff in mind. Don't forget about your ad copy and your ad extensions, because this is really all that your consumer is going to see. So I see this a lot too. You can focus on your campaign structure. You can have the most impeccable structure possible. But if your ad copy and your ad extensions are not good, then that's all that the consumer sees. So just don't forget about that. Don't forget about testing those and making sure that you're testing those as much as you're testing your landing pages. And then for e-commerce, of course, always optimize your product feed, run shopping and dynamic remarketing campaigns. I can't stress this enough. Like, dynamic remarketing is going to perform almost every single time. I don't think I've ever seen an e-commerce account where dynamic remarketing didn't generate direct click-through sales and a lot of view-through conversions as well. So keep that in mind. And then structure your campaigns for ease of management, budget control, ad copy, and landing page segmentation. Use common sense here. Don't structure your campaigns in a way that's going to make it a nightmare for you to manage, because that's just going to be inefficient. So further from this, structure your campaigns and ad groups, keywords, ads. Just do everything in a spreadsheet first. It's just going to make things better for you, and then you can upload to Google Ads Editor before you end up actually importing into the engine. That way you don't have to worry about removing stuff, deleting stuff if you make mistakes and all that. So I'll go into that. This is a screenshot of the actual spreadsheet, but I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet here because I just think it's easier to see it in real time. So this is probably a lot to look at on your screens. And what I can tell you is that I wanted to have something that would be practical for everyone to take away. So what I did here was I kind of put a campaign theme and example for 3 different, sort of fictional categories. Like, I have a lead generation example. This is a B2C personal injury law firm in Houston, Texas, how you would structure those campaigns and that account. Here's one for B2B project management software. So just like a SaaS type company. And then here's an e-commerce example for a B2C luxury furniture retailer. Now, I chose all 3 of these because they're all ones that I've kind of managed. I didn't manage one in Houston, Texas, but I've managed some personal injury firms. I've managed some B2B project management software, managed a client in that, and I've also managed a client in a luxury retailer or a luxury retailer client. So I figured that it made sense to use some real examples here without giving away the brand names of them. And what I did was I tried to put some things here where you can see the theme and the business unit. I always recommend having a sort of listing this out before you build out an account. So you know that you're going to have maybe some brand search, stuff that you might focus on. You know that you want to have, maybe you're focusing on auto injuries for the injury attorney, maybe personal injury. And then you want to go from there to look at, so I call this is also auto, but there's some caveats here, like what I do with lawyers, for example, is I'll actually have a general category and a lawyer category. So what this means is, I'm focusing on terms like car accident, Houston, Texas. That would be in the general category, but then down here, this would be car accident lawyer, Houston, Texas. So that's something that I just think is really important to focus on, and and again, just make sure that you segment accordingly. And the reason to segment those is due to your budget. You don't want to end up in a position where your budget gets limited because you're bidding on the term car accident Houston, and then it takes up your whole campaign budget, and then your lawyer terms never show up. So keep this stuff in mind when you're building these kind of things out. I want to check in with the chat here. Okay, no question. It doesn't look like any questions so far. Okay. And then looking through, what I also wanted to talk about with some of these is down here, you'll see remarketing display. Again, I put a note here that you can't really run this in Google if you're running a law firm. You're just not going to be able to do it. So you're going to have to use a different platform for this. You can try to get your audience approved. You might get lucky, but Google will probably blacklist your audience when you build it. And then you want to make sure that you have a platform outside of Google for that. Like I said, Perfect Audience is a pretty good one for lead generation, but you are going to pay a CPM instead of a CPC if you do that. So I just want to let everyone know that ahead of time, because that becomes a little bit different to manage. But over here, you'll see my explanations. Only if competitors are bidding on your terms or you don't rank organically, that's when you need to use this. Or down here, only if you have the budget to support it, as it's more expensive for leads compared to the lawyer terms. So anyway, I'm gonna skip ahead. This is going to be more for everyone else to be able to use as a reference point, but I want to make sure that that we have time to go through the nuts and bolts here. So so let me go back to the presentation here for a second, because some of the examples that I have of the tools that are in here, I just wanted to kind of show how this works. So you'll find in the spreadsheet that you can develop your list of focus keywords for your industry. So in this example, I've got kind of the two different categories. So I just put like the lawyer one with car, auto, automobile, vehicle, truck, SUV, and you kind of see accident, crash are some of the terms that go along with car accident, and then injury, and then attorney, lawyer, law firm. So when you look at things like this, what I'm doing is I'm trying to build out what the keyword set is going to be. So in my case, I might have car accident injury as a term, but then I might also have car accident injury attorney, maybe car accident attorney. So this is kind of the list of the terms. And then the software, project management software, and I kept it simple. So project management, PM, task management, and then software tools and solutions. And what I like to do, I put a link in the spreadsheet for this. I like to use one of these just online concatenate tools. You could do it in the spreadsheet too if you want, but I just find that it's way more simple to just put the list of your terms in here and then use the output permutations. And this will allow you to kind of just build a huge list of keywords from just a few simple seeder words. And anyway, set it up on broad match first, always, and then just build out the match types yourself after, because it will output them in like with quotes and brackets and all that, but you don't want to do that for AdWords editor. So you'll see that in the spreadsheet example too, but this is kind of what it looks like when you build it out. So you'll see that you end up with, from just like these few keywords in here and then choosing the permutations that I used, I ended up with 96 keywords. So that was an easy way to just kind of build out a list of terms around, auto, accident, car crash, and all that kind of stuff. Saves you a lot of time when you do it this way. All right. going through here. And then, as you can see, you want to build out the campaigns in a sheet with your keywords. So this is kind of what I did afterwards. So I took my project management software terms that came out and I started to structure them. So I had my list of keywords, and what I did was I went in and I built out broad match modified by just putting some simple formulas in there, built out phrase and exact. And this is the way that I would structure the account. I would have sort of I called this like non-brand search vertical terms, or whatever whatever you want to call it. And then you have your ad group name. I always try to keep my ad group names really simple. So project management solutions, I know that every keyword in there is going to be about solutions. So you see like versions of PM solutions, project management solutions. Down here I got the same thing with tools, and then down here I have the task management stuff. And you want to segment your campaigns or your ad groups only in the way that you're going to be writing out your ad copy. So this is something that comes up all the time. You hear people talking about SCAGs, you hear people talking about like alpha, beta, whatever structure and whatnot they want to talk about. But the reality is you only want to segment to the effect that you're going to write different ad copy. So in my case, I'm not going to write an ad that says PM software just because I think it looks bad. So I'm going to write an ad that says project management software in the headline. I might say PM software like in one of the descriptions though. So I'm going to keep these together. I'm not going to write unique ad copy to separate those. So they'll go in the same ad group. But I am going to write solutions in a different ad group. And I am going to write task management instead of project management in a task management ad group. And the reason for doing it this way is that you'll get above average ad relevance in Google. If I were to put task management tools in a project management software ad group, and I wrote the ad to say project management software, I'm going to probably get below average ad relevance. And that's one of the few things that you can control with quality score these days is your ad relevance, because it's directly related to your keywords to your ad copy. So sometimes you can get away with using some dynamic keyword headlines and putting some things together. Like if you start to find that, the word solutions, you don't really get a whole lot on that, and it just doesn't make sense to have a bunch of separate ad groups for it. You might be able to put it in the software group and then have like a dynamic keyword headline or whatnot, but you just have to be careful with your structure there. I tend to avoid dynamic keyword headlines when I can, but sometimes there is a use case for it. And then as you go, just make sure that your structure is efficient and effective for management. I can't emphasize this enough. Like if you try to make some SCAG structure and you end up with, all these campaigns that have like 900 ad groups in them, you're just going to waste a bunch of time and effort, and you're probably going to end up with like 85% of your keywords being low search volume and getting 0 impressions anyway, in which case you will have wasted all this time building out an account structure that didn't do anything. So when you're building this out, just make sure that you are focusing on the keywords that are going to get a good amount of volume. You can even run your keywords through the Google tools online, the Google Keyword Planner, and just see what the traffic estimates are. And it'll give you some indication of if they're going to be all low volume or not. So I recommend, checking that kind of stuff out before you launch it. Don't build out a bunch of 7 token keywords like project management, software, top 10 companies, or weird stuff like that. You're just going to have a hard time writing ads for it or building it out. So start smaller and then expand as you go. Don't try to build out the most grand structure in the world and then, cut it down later, because you waste a bunch of time doing that, and probably you're probably just not focusing on the most important piece of just getting the highest volume keywords out first with the best ad copy and getting that tested. All right. Okay, so you asked about that, about segmenting the match types into their own ad group. I do not segment them into their own ad group, and the reason I don't do that is because I used to actually do that a long time ago, probably about 4 years ago or so. I stopped doing it, and the reason I used to do it was because there used to really not be low search volume keywords. So this is an important thing to note of why I'm notoriously a hater on the SCAG setup or breaking out by match type and overdoing it. The reason is that long time ago, you could bid on a 7 token keyword and if it got searched, your ad would show up. So it was, I mean, that it was like you could come into an account and you could build out this massive structure with all these really long tail keywords. And then anytime that they showed up, you'd have a 10 out of 10 quality score. You'd rank in the top and it would be, awesome. But then Google started introducing the low search volume thing. So what I started to see was I actually had a real client that this happened to. We had a bunch of 4 or 5 token keywords, and we ended up not getting impressions on those anymore because our negatives were blocking our shorter tail keywords, and the shorter tail keywords are the only ones that weren't low search volume anymore. And so the exact match as a negative on the broad match and all that stuff can actually mess you up. So I find that it doesn't really pay off. And sometimes having broad match, modified, or phrase match actually performs better than exact match within the same ad group. So reason to segment them for me anymore. I will say there are some exceptions to this where every once in a while you might just have a list of kind of money keywords on exact match or something that just are awesome that you want to break out into their own ad group or their own campaign or whatnot. I don't have a problem with that. If it works for your client in that scenario, go for it. There's not necessarily just one approach that always works. All right, and then looking here, this is just an example of an ad copy sheet that's here, and I want to kind of specify you can build out your ads in the sheet with built-in character counts. So this is all going to be available to you. It just kind of gives you a chance of writing out all your ad groups, your ad copy, and everything in a structure that lets you upload it to AdWords Editor. So I usually set up my accounts where I have like 4 ads or so to start with a few tests. So in this case, I have it set up to test testing different headline 2s and then testing different description 1s across these different ads. So this is just an example of kind of how you can approach it. That'll be in the spreadsheet for you. And then below I wrote like a long sentence that just shows you that there's, if you go over the character count, it'll give you kind of the red there. And this is all structured already to upload into AdWords Editor. So if you were to open up your account just like this and go into, one of your campaigns, you could literally copy one of your campaigns so that you get all of the, ad extensions, you get all of the location targeting, all of the good stuff that you want. You might have to change your bid strategy or whatnot if you're running like target CPA, you don't want to launch on target CPA. But you can actually just copy one of your campaigns, go in and copy the name of your new campaign, paste it like this, go into this. This is just a quick example of kind of how you can use this setup. Delete all the ad groups. So now you just have a campaign that just has the same settings as your other one. Because you know that most of the time you're going to have the same targeting options and all that, like with your locations. Now, of course, you want to make sure of that depending on your account. So this is a GeoUS. I knew that I was copying from a GeoUS one. So what I would do is I would actually go into my spreadsheet after I have everything built out. So this is like the project management one. And you just copy this whole thing and you can just literally paste it in. So you just go in, keywords, make multiple changes. And from here, you can paste this. And what it'll do is it'll actually, since I already have the campaign created, it'll create my ad groups and keywords for me. You can finish and review changes, keep those. And you see, like, I now have my ad groups in here. Everything is set up, easy to go. And then the only thing is I don't have bids on these, so you'll want to create bids. I'm just going to put a fake bid in. You'd want to do some more research on your account. If you know that these keywords might be more like a $10 bid, maybe you start with that. And then you go in to your ads, and the ads are set up the same way. So you go in, copy your ads. Now I don't have a final URL here, so it's not gonna work. But let's put in a URL, and then what you can do is you can copy this whole thing. Of course, don't copy the character counts, but you can copy this whole thing, and it's the same setup. So then you're going in here, going to ads, expanded text ads, and then you make multiple changes. Always make sure that you're including campaigns and ad group info, and you can paste this in too. and you can see it added 8 ads because that's what I copied, but it didn't add any new ad groups. So I know that it worked properly. So then I can go in and I put a label for landing page 1, whatever your landing page, if you want to use labels, you can. I just put one in there as an example. But you can see I now have 4 ads in these 2 ad groups that I was just working on. I didn't create other ones for the sake of the example because it just seemed like a little bit of a waste of time to do that. But the idea is that in this spreadsheet, you could have everything for your account before you go live. So you could have multiple campaigns, multiple ad groups, all of your ads in one sheet, and you can upload the entire thing all at once as you launch kind of a new structure this way. Um, so that's kind of how this is set up for you to work on. But what I also did was I included some notes on what I think a good strategy would be for retargeting. And sorry, I always say retargeting. Google calls it remarketing. So display remarketing in Google. Um, but with remarketing, you'll want to run, there's a few different things that I kind of stand by. When it comes to lead generation, I'll use multiple audiences here. So I'll do like a 1-day audience, a 3-day audience, 7, etc. And then I'll have classifications. So I might do all visitors, and I might do specific landing page visitors, webinar visitors. I might have a list for people who attended a webinar. Um, I might have step 1 lead capture. So maybe there's like a 2-step lead capture that the client has or something. So I remarket people that didn't make it to the final step, but they finished the first step. And then I exclude people that already converted, customer lists that are already in their CRM. So what you do here is you start to build out example audiences like these here. So you've got kind of your non-converting landing page 1 visitors 1 day. And I write everything in this kind of annoying verbiage because I just think it's easier to stay organized. Same thing, non-converting landing page 1 visitors 2 to 3 day. And the 2 to 3 day, what you're doing is you're targeting the 3-day audience for landing page visitors, and then you're excluding your 1-day audience. So you're kind of bucketing it out, similar to how you'd bucket out your email marketing. You might do this with email marketing where you have, different emails going out to people that are in different sequences or different stages of the process or everything. So you're doing kind of the same thing. It's like a tiered approach. And then what you end up doing is you do this at the ad group level. So you've got first ad group, second ad group, third ad group. And then what you end up doing with this is that you have different ad groups or different bids at the ad group level, and it makes it much easier to organize. If you start adding too many audiences to the same ad groups, it's just very difficult to manage. You have to click through a bunch of screens to get to all of your optimization. So I recommend breaking out your audiences at the ad group level for your remarketing and using a setup like this. And then, of course, I just put some ideas of like what kind of creative you can run here, different ways that you can segment it, different things that you can test within those ad groups. And with e-commerce, it's almost the same thing for me, but the difference is what I like to do with e-commerce is have, product viewers, cart abandoners, category pages, so people that just visit specific categories. And then what I like to do is I like to actually re-engage loyal customers with e-commerce. So if you have people who are repeat buyers, or you kind of have a client who has a product that people will buy a few times. So like I had that luxury furniture example, if somebody has bought a sectional from you, they might be someone that's also maybe in market later to buy a coffee table. So you might want to advertise to people who bought sectionals with ads promoting other products or things like that. So you want to have your loyal customers in here. When I say customer list, you can't actually run Google remarketing to your customer list. You can add a customer list as in a search audience, or you could do it with YouTube, but you can't do it with regular display remarketing. So I just want to throw that out there that it's good to have your customer list in there, but to build out your kind of loyal customer purchases, you have to do it based on your cookie data. So, people that met certain conditions. With your customer list down here, you would have to target them with like a YouTube creative. So I just wanted to call that out. Or a Gmail ad, you can do that too. Just wanted to call that out so that you don't go in and think that you can add a customer list to your regular display campaign because it won't work properly. Uh, And then the reason for that is that it has to be on a owned property. So Google owned property for that, or like if you're doing Facebook, it's like Facebook is their own property. So that's why you can do customer lists there. And then of course you want to run dynamic. Dynamic remarketing is going to be better almost all the time here, and it just tends to work better for e-commerce. But you can get good results with general remarketing too, promoting sales and just having other value props. And like I said, that example of the person who bought the sectional, you wouldn't use dynamic remarketing to show them a coffee table. You'd use a general creative. Um, all right. So that's the end of that part. But what I wanted to do before I answer questions was check in on some of the other things that we can look at here inside of the actual account. So I went through some of the examples of, the keyword sections and how that can work, and all this stuff is in this spreadsheet too. So you'll be able to kind of go through there. But what I wanted to also do was spend a little bit of time just inside the Google Ads interface, just showing you practically where you can do some of this stuff and like where all of this lives. So you've got your section here. This is going to be going into audiences. If it wants to work, there it goes. So I put a kind of a fake audience in this account. This is just a test account, by the way. So don't worry about like why there's nothing in here. But I created a fake audience for education, putting that I was like a education business. But basically, what you do is you would go in and create your website visitors, and same thing as before. Now you can use Google Analytics to build your audiences here, or you can use the Google Ads pixel. I just tend to use the Google Ads one a lot of the time. I find it to be a little easier, but sometimes I'll use analytics for certain types of industries. It really just depends. Your customer list is in here. But what you would do when you go to build this out is, like, let's say you were going to build out your visitors one day. You would build out your audience like this. So you might call this whatever, all visitors one day, and then or maybe do, let's see, landing page one, visitors one day, and then this would be, contains whatever it is, whatever your URL contains for landing page one. And then you would just change the duration here to one day. And then later on, when you go to create your campaign, you can also have one that is just gonna converting visitors, let's just call this converting visitors 180 days. Maybe you want to exclude people that converted in here, and this would be one where you can have it be specific tags, visitors of a page. Maybe they went to the thank you page or whatever it is. But you get the idea. So it might be that this is how you structure it. So you now have a 180 day. Now this audience would just become an exclusion audience. So when you go to build out your ad groups, you would just go and add it as a negative audience. And then that way you don't have to create all these weird combinations in that audience tab, because that's something that can be really annoying. And that's actually how I started off doing it in the beginning. I would create all these ridiculous audiences called non-converting visitors one day, and I would make custom combinations where that audience was made up of the all visitors one day and excluding the converting visitors, and it just becomes ridiculous. So easier way to do it is to go into one of your actual ad groups here. This is a search campaign, so it's a little bit different. But what you would do is you would go in and you would actually say, I'm going to add in my audience here, targeting, and you would actually go after that audience. So for whatever reason, this is loading slow as shit, but you would add in your audience target here, and then you would go into your exclusions and add that exclusion. So so that's kind of how you would go through your process of building out the ad groups. And once you build out like one or two of them, you can do the rest of it in AdWords Editor, and it's a lot easier to manipulate in there. So just wanted to kind of call that out and make sure that stuff was clear in here. But all in all, like when you're building out these campaigns, you just want to make sure you're setting yourself up to have some good tests in your ad copy. You can try to structure things with just 2 ads to do a straight A/B test if you want to do it like that. But I've just found that over time, using some of the automation can go a long way, especially with some of the changes that Google has made. Like, I used to be pretty fanatical about managing everything manually, if like probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that. And then I started to change my approach a lot. And now I'll use the optimize the best performing ad because it really does get me better results much more quickly. I'll use target CPA bidding if I have enough data. I'll use target ROAS bidding if I have enough data. I'll use manual CPC if that makes sense in certain scenarios. But just wanted to call that out. That's the way that I approach it. Just checking to see if any more questions came in. Doesn't look like it. And then we go over here. And then same thing with your keywords, like that question on the match types. This is kind of a setup that I would use. And then later on, after my campaign is live, I would look at my actual search terms and see if it makes sense to build out more or less and go from there. Like, it might make sense to add in, you might go through your search term reports and find better results or better keywords that are just, you didn't think of, in which case you can add them to the existing ad group, or you can make a new ad group if it warrants having more specific ad copy. So you can definitely do a lot of stuff there. Yeah, okay, so this looks like it is loaded now. But basically what I'm talking about is you would add in an audience like this. Let's say this was your 1-day audience, save it, and then you'd go in and you would add your exclusion to here, and you would add it at the ad group level in this case, and you would say, like, I'm going to exclude whatever it was, your converting audience. Let's say that was your converting audience, and then that would be excluded at that ad group level, and that's how you would tier that out. Okay. Let's see. So I don't have anything else that I wanted to go through specifically. I just wanted to talk about any other questions that might come up. So looks like you guys are a quiet group. There's not a lot of questions here. Let's see.
If anybody, very good time. That was a nice efficient use of time. Hit the 37 minutes, 35 minutes on the nose, which is awesome. Left a lot of time, I know, for questions like we talked about. And I'm just, does anybody have anything? There we go. So Brandon says, how much data would you say is sufficient for testing CPA bidding?
Yeah, so this one, that's a good question. So Google will you can use Google kind of as a guideline for this, but in reality, you're probably going to want to have at least a few conversions a day. Most of the time, you're going to get the best results if you're getting like 10 conversions a day, I would say, for this. You might get some good results if you're getting less than that, but it really just depends on the industry. So just keep that stuff in mind. And also, if you're limited by budget and you get 2 conversions a day, it's probably not going to be worth using. But that's why, like I always say, you have to approach kind of your automated bidding and like all the automation versus manual stuff based on the size of the client, the industry, and everything that goes along with it. You might also get some results if you try the maximize conversion setting. It can be a little dangerous, so you got to watch it close. But I've actually seen some scenarios where I started off with a maximized conversion setting, like on, let's just say it's like dynamic search, and then it ends up working. If we want to, so you're saying,
JB says I'm sorry, too many things. JB says we're currently organized by keyword plus match type. He means his ad group, I'm guessing. If we want to restructure based on ad content, what's the best process for doing that?
Gotcha. So keyword plus match. So the nice thing is, if you're already segmented by keyword plus match type, it can be pretty easy to aggregate your stuff together. So what I would typically do there is I would go through first and take inventory of the keywords that you're focused on and figure out which ones you would actually write different ad copy for. And then once you have that figured out, you can basically create, instead of creating new ad groups, you can actually just aggregate the lower performing keywords to the higher performing keyword ad groups. So you might find that, let's just say your phrase match performing really well. Well, just take your broad match, modified, and exact match keywords and move them into the phrase match ad groups. That way you don't lose all that history behind your good performing phrase match keywords. And you can do it that way to start. That way you're not deleting everything or you're not having to pause every single thing in the account. You're keeping the really good stuff running, but you're just adding the other things in to make it more efficient for you. So now I don't know what your account exactly looks like, but what I would say is that your best bet is to do all of that stuff in a spreadsheet and then like upload the changes into AdWords Editor or do something like that. Don't do it in the actual interface. All right. Then another question.
I got this one. I want to read this one because I actually have an interesting opinion on this as well. So I'm going to let you answer, but I want to throw my 2 cents in here first, if you don't mind, which was Brandon asked, any suggestions on non-commerce landing pages for high CPC services? For example, software development company who has clicks in the $20 to $30 per click range should be direct to a targeted landing page versus the homepage in your experience. The first thing I would say to that is, if that was me, and I'm curious to see how much your opinion potentially differs from mine, Nick, is what I would do in that case is I would probably only and this might be my mistake, but I would not want to waste clicks on potentially, like, for that click cost, I would not want to waste clicks on potentially unqualified visits. So I would probably write content that would rank ideally organically, or create content that would rank for very specific types of queries that would essentially self-qualify anybody who would be finding that content, and then just be willing to pay for clicks on a remarketing basis or retargeting basis for people that have already come to a specific problem or solution.
Got it. So I think so to what you said, I mean, I think basically if you're not ranking organically for some of this stuff and you're not trying to rank organically, you're going to be fucked and with stuff that expensive. Like that's going to be really hard. So you're going to have to make sure that you are ranking organically for some of it. And then what you're going to want to do is I would in an industry like that, make sure that I'm really only focusing on the most qualified terms that we have. I wouldn't be building out a lot of general stuff. And I actually have, so I have some clients that have had clicks this expensive. I've even had some clients that had clicks that were over $100.
Yeah. The mesothelioma clicks of the world.
Yeah, those ones. But I've also had like web development companies, app software, app development, stuff like that. And those can be up in like the $20, $30, $40 click range as well. And the project management software, stuff like that can all get expensive. But what you end up doing is you focus on some of like the I would call them almost like the mid-tier long tail terms. So like my project management example, task management software is a lot easier to rank for, and a lot there's less competition than project management software.
Yeah,
so stuff you can kind of go down that road and make sure your landing pages are built out for that. But yeah, you're going to have a lot of remarketing. And to Nick's point, you're going to want to have RLSA. So you're going to want to have remarketing audiences on search and maybe only bid on some of those terms for people who've been to your site already, because it can get pretty tough.
I did want to ask you, man, like I remember back in the day it was 300%, and then I heard 400%. Like if you had to make a very general statement, so I apologize in advance for asking this, about just paid search, like in general, like direct response paid search, what's like a reasonable or acceptable like ROAS at this point?
Whew, man. So just ecom right now? Are you just talking about
ecom? Yeah, let's say just ecom, because I feel like lead gen's too messy on the conversion side, because there's like, you figure, even just thinking of law firms, like you've got your conversion rate on your pre-qual, and then if the pre-qual does make it to qualification, it doesn't mean it's actually going to lead to a case. So it just balloons the entire ad, like the ROI model. Whereas so if we just do direct response where a transaction can be captured and directly attributed to the paid click, what's a reasonable ROAS for something like ecom?
Gotcha. So I would say that you're going to be looking at, depending on the industry, anywhere from a 2x to like a 7x return.
200 to 700%.
Anywhere in that range is what you're going to want to look for. But most of the time, you're going to be lucky to be in the 200 to 400% range. Like you're going to be probably happy with that. I'm talking about non-brand search.
Yeah.
What I end up finding that the way that I approach it these days is like, I mean, this is why you don't want to be in the business of just doing paid search. You want to be able to do more than that, because what I end up doing is I'll do non-brand search. I'll have my brands campaigns. I'll have a bunch of display prospecting, paid social, and a bunch of different things going on. And then what that ends up doing is it makes like my aggregate media spend pencil out to be really profitable. And so you can't, it's like one of those things, you can't approach it in a vacuum these days. It's just a losing strategy. So because it's so competitive, and with e-com, shopping campaigns are going to perform better than non-brand search almost every time. So I mean, I've been finding that like a lot of times I'll have barely any non-brand search these days in my e-com clients. I'll have a little bit, like very like long tail stuff, but RLSA stuff like that. But yeah, shopping is your big win there.
A different Brandon, Brandon with an O instead of a Y, asks, can you insert geodata into extensions? Competitors appear to be inserting state data based on user location.
Yeah. So okay, so the into extensions. I'm trying to think of how that would be. So like like a site link or a structured snippet. Is that what you're talking about? And while you're responding to that, what I would say is that you can insert this data into your ad copy. So what you can do is you can upload business data into Google Ads, and there's a whole there's a business data section. If you just go under tools, you'll see it, and you can upload city information, and then you can build out ads with ad customizers that will say, best tire repair blank, and then it will say best tire repair Houston, Texas, or best tire repair Los Angeles, California, stuff like that. It'll automatically do that based on the IP address of the user, because they match to be recognized in the city that you have business data for. So yeah, you can do all that. It's a pretty annoying and complicated process, to be honest with you, but it works really well if you get it right. There's also some software out there now where you can have your landing page dynamically adjust based on that too. So they get to the landing page and it dynamically puts their location. You got to be careful though. Sometimes it's best to just have like the state or something, because it can get a little bit weird if somebody, how it goes these days with mobile. And then sometimes if your connection, like just before it said I was in Anaheim, California. I'm not in Anaheim, California though. I'm like not even close, not even that close to it. So that kind of stuff can happen.
Brandon with an O asked as a follow-up question, what is a cost-effective method for getting star ratings into our ads to increase CTR? Do we have to pay a third-party service like Trustpilot every month? If so, do the star ratings disappear after you cancel the subscription?
Got it. So to the latter question of do they disappear if you cancel the subscription, I actually don't know the answer to that, because I've never had a client cancel their subscription after getting star ratings in there.
I'm like 99% sure that they do, because those are hosted services. So like if you're paying reseller ratings or Trustpilot or Shopper Approved, when you stop paying the service side of things, that the dynamically inserted code that comes through the hosted snippet that part is disabled. So you
got it. So they like close the feed basically.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. So yeah, and in my experience of getting these, it's almost always the most efficient to just pay for them. It's very difficult to get it otherwise. So Trustpilot.
Yeah, I don't know another way to get them in paid ads. Obviously, organic, there's just a specific schema markup you have to have on the page. But for paid, I don't know anybody that's ever gotten them on paid without paying third-party service.
They used to have ways of doing it, but they used to have ways of doing all that. It was like around the time that you could still do Google Shopping organically. Like when they used to have they used to have ways of doing it and getting like reviews from I forget, like when they used to have when the Google Trusted Stores was more prominent. You used to be able to get it through that way, but they stopped doing all that, and now you pretty much have to have a third party. I don't know of another way to do it for free. Haven't seen anyone do it. So Trustpilot tends to be one of the better ones. Honestly, I think it's worth it anyway, because it's good for you to have those like actual reviews, and
that's the worst part, right? Like depending on what your terms are you're going after in your industry, like if your competitors are doing it, it's almost like table stakes, because then by not doing it, you actually look less trustworthy, based on user perception and how educated the user base is that's shopping for whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah, and if you're e-commerce, use Yotpo. Anyway, like use Yotpo for I would say just use that for your business, because what you end up getting a lot of is you get a lot of really authentic reviews that are verified. So that's another thing that I really like too. So I've seen some good stuff with Yotpo, and then you can actually integrate it to your Facebook ads retargeting, and have retargeting with like your reviews.
I've worked with reseller ratings and Trustpilot. Trustpilot, you can negotiate a little bit more aggressively than reseller ratings. That's more like extortion still at this point. Shopper Approved is definitely the cheapest. Shopper Approved seems to have some vertical preferences. It seems to work. It seems to be used more prevalently, and I run into it more in the automotive space. but I'm trying to remember the other one. Then Yotpo's good. Get Satisfaction has a really nice solution for ecom, and so does Bazaar Voice. Bazaar Voice is stupid expensive, but they've built super nice like UI and like feature like interactive feature functionality. So like the way that Amazon does like their like aggregate grids of like scoring like this is how many 5-star and 3-star, and here's the average sentiment, and like having filtering and stuff. They've got that all built in really nicely.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that yeah, so just make sure that whatever it is, it's verified reviews. It's going to help you in the long run. People, it's so important these days. And with your question on CTR, like have we seen a dramatic boost in CTR from star ratings? I have to say no, I haven't seen a dramatic boost because there's really no, it's not easy to measure. So like they give you some like automated extensions and you can see your seller rating performance and all that stuff in the AdWords interface. But like, I don't know. I think back in the day when it was getting more popular, it would give you a dramatic boost and you might go from 2% to 3%. It was amazing. But now it's like, I don't even know if it really has that much of an impact. Unless you're in an industry where everyone else has it and you don't, you might see a big boost once you get it because people aren't clicking on the ad that doesn't have them. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of variables there. So I can't say that I've see a dramatic boost these days, but I haven't really measured it. More recently. All the clients that I'm working with already have it. So it's been a while since I actually introduced it to a client.
Yeah, it makes sense.